Hello everybody, it's Edouard here. I'm really happy and excited to be with you today because we are going to talk about the new instrument we released a few days ago, which is the SQ80 V. So it's a remake of the original Ensoniq SQ80 from the mid-80s. And we've been working on it for the past month, and we are really proud to release this instrument. So we're going to talk briefly about the reasons we wanted to do this instrument and bring it to you for your musical journey. And then we're going to explore a little bit the different features it's composed of. And in the second part, we'll invite Lily, one of our sound designers, to show us 3 of the presets she made for the factory library. And we'll try to explore a little bit how she designed this sound and what are the little tricks she used as a sound designer to make these presets alive and interesting. So yeah, so the SQ80 V, well, it's kind of a different candidate from what we used to do, because basically the presets, the instruments we modeled in V Collection are kind of blockbusters from the era and very praised synthesizers like the CEST or the X7 or the Prophets or the Minimoog. And for this instrument, it's been like quite different because I really wanted to bring a different sound in V Collection and really add a tone in the sound palette of the different synths we have in this soft bundle. And unlike the other instruments we modeled so far, SQ80 is kind of not really known or not really legendary. It's not really a CS80 or it's not a Minimoog. And even though I think it was really worth bringing this instrument to the V Collection because of its character and really the sound it delivers, because it's really a different beast from the other digital synths out there. So back in the days, in the 80s, a kind of trend was to make synthesizers that were like not analog and that were able to mimic some acoustic instruments. And so among the competition, you had like the M1, the DX7, the D50, all these synths that were pretty good at mimicking instruments and acoustic sounds. And on the other hand, we had different competitors, which was the Ensoniq SQ80. And it was kind of trying to mimic this kind of sounds, but its structure was still quite similar to analog synths and standard synthesizers. And even though the original interface was only composed of buttons and one slider and no knobs, it was still very pleasant to use and easy to program. And back in the days, it was not really praised for its qualities to mimic instruments, but nowadays we can see that the price on the second-hand market is really rising, and it's becoming more and more rare. While you can see like some M1 for 300, 400, 500 on the second-hand market, and it's just because nobody really wants to program a sound on the M1 nowadays, while on the SQ80, it's really fun actually to program sounds, and its sound is really different. This SQ80 is really digital synths with character, as weird as it can sound. It's really like organic, and I will explain you when exploring the synth why. And so this is really the reason why we wanted to bring this sound in V Collection, because you get this like 8-bit, lo-fi, gritty, and textured sound, and in conjunction with the analog filter, while you get really something really interesting and really organic, almost like an analog synthesizer, basically. So yeah, so right now we can start to explore a little bit the instrument, and then we'll meet Lily and try to explore a few of her sounds and try to understand how these are made. So let's get started. So like you can now see on the screen, you have three parts in this instrument. You have a hardware panel, you have a synthesis panel, and an effect panel. And so the first view, well, let me select the preset. So the first view is really streamlined for preset browsing and for really a simple approach of the instrument. So what I wanted to do in this view is not being too intimidating with a lot of features, and just pack the must-have features that you need when browsing presets. So if I'm browsing preset, I can, for example, modify the octave of the different oscillators. You can detune them in semitones, and you can also fine-tune them to just detune them a little bit. And you can just try to see if the preset you're looking for matches your expectation. And this is really like the minimal configuration you need to fine-tune your presets. You have the three oscillators here, you have the filter, and you have, of course, the arpeggiator on the front panel here that you can activate or deactivate. And you also have the unison. And this is really like the minimal feature set that maybe beginners will try to fine-tune to their needs when browsing presets. And yeah, so this is really like the minimal view, let's say. You also have this little trapdoor here, and we'll talk about it a bit later. That trapdoor is really to fine-tune the, let's say, the state of the engine, and it's called voice dispersion. So you can introduce some inconsistencies between the voices to be able to like mimic if the sound is in good condition, like well calibrated or not, to bring more life and subtleties in the sound. And that's pretty much the minimal feature set that you can cover here. And on the other hand, you have the second view, which is called the synthesis panel. And this one is a different candidate, so I will load a different preset just for this one, like this. And basically, this is the core of the instrument. Here you have pretty much everything streamlined for a modern sound design approach on a computer. Because, of course, the original synth that you can see behind over there is really like doesn't have knobs, and it's really streamlined around the screen and pages. You can select pages, for example, oscillators and filters, and then you can select parameters on the screen, and you just use a knob to change the value of the parameter. So this is not suited for mouse workflow. So here we really wanted to have something where instantly you can understand how the preset is made and have pretty much everything hands-on. So we decided to, on top of the hardware view, add this synthesis view to be able to really work like a modern VST, like for example Pigments. So the SQ80 is kind of, it looks like a little bit a Minimoog. You have three oscillators. So the first one is here, and you can select different waveforms. And you can enable another oscillator. You can blend them. For example, if I can fine-tune. And I can layer up to 3 oscillators. And this is basically the basis of this instrument. And for each oscillator, you have a wide array of waveforms. So the first category is the classic SQ80 waveforms. So you have classic waveforms, synthesizers waveforms, and you also have pretty crazy waveforms like this. So when the filter is closed, you really hear this 8-bit grid. And so these are the original SQ80 waveforms. So a part of them are from the USQ1, the previous model the previous like a revision of the synth, and SQ80 came after with more waveforms. So you have all these waveforms available for a total of something like 80. And then you have the trance waves. So this is kind of different because the trance waves have been introduced in a later generation of synthesizers, like in the VFX, if I'm right. And these are basically wavetables. So the original VFX wavetables are the X waveforms here. And these are pretty different. And unlike the SQ80 waveform, you can morph the sound like a classic wavetable approach. And on top of that, you have the hidden waveforms. And the hidden waveforms are really like the chaotic spices that you can add in your sound. So these are basically, originally on the synth you had a hack available, and you could extend the waveform memory to read somewhere else in the OS. So you have part of codes that are waveforms and part of codes that are not really waveforms, and these are mixed together. And you can really have like happy accidents and really random surprises. Like this, for example. And this almost sounds like a rhythm, but it's not really a rhythm. It's just, you know, some weird surprises. And it's not really like a standard waveforms. These are looping pretty strangely. And this is really an extra spice to the SQ80 workflow. And we implemented the USQ1 hidden waves, so the hack available on the USQ1, and also the SQ80 hidden waves. So this is really the core of the instrument. Like the sound of the SQ80 is really special in a way that the oscillator is 8-bit, and it's not really good, but at the same time it's really good because it has a lot of character and sounds totally different from any other synths I've ever tried in my life. And yeah, so basically, maybe I will load another preset. And you know, this 3 oscillators paradigm was called by Ensoniq Crosswave. And Crosswave was for them the way to stack and maybe, let's say, layer and maybe stack over time as well some different waveforms. So in the SQ80 waveforms, you have like standard waveforms, you have noise waveforms, you have transient waveforms, you even have drums. And with all these different type of timbres and yes, sounds, you can really layer and craft your sound with like a sandwich, let's say. And so for example, on this sound, you have 3 parts. You have, so this preset has been designed by Jean-Michel, one of our sound designers. And you have 2 hidden waves and a transient waveform. So the transient will really shape the beginning of the sound, and it stops. And then on top of that, you have other oscillators that will take over and, you know, do the, like, make the body of the sound. And when exploring this kind of sounds, you can just like try to change the waveform. And see and try to, you know, modify it to your convenience. Maybe change the octave, for example. And now I'm trying to find something relevant to for my attack of the sounds. So this, for example, sounds a bit more modern. And for example, here we don't hear the oscillator 2, so I will raise the mod wheel and see how it sounds. And this one is a hidden wave, so depending on the octave I'm playing, the sound may change because these are multi-sample waveforms. So you have a sampled waveform for each octave, and the hidden waves are so messy that sometimes between each octave you don't have the same sound. And it's really something, an additional ingredient that can really enhance and create happy accidents. For For example, I can try other waveforms, like the USQ1 waveforms are pretty good actually, and more rhythmic and surprising. So maybe this one. So you can hear this strange beating. I will try other ones. Oh, this one is nice. So it's subtle, but here I'm just bringing more texture to the sound, and it's kind of weird and surprising. So, and you know, this kind of textures is pretty hard to do if you want to sound design it. And here you have little bricks that you can assemble together and mix, and it creates really happy accidents that otherwise are pretty hard to achieve. And so I will keep it that way. And on the oscillator 2, you can also use some sync and some amplitude modulation. And the oscillator 2 is really synced to the oscillator 1. So it's really another layer of timbres that you can add with that. So now that I've set my oscillators, I will maybe talk a little bit more about the filter. So the filter and the DCA4, which is the amplification stage after the filter, is analog. So the mix of the 8-bit oscillators and the output that is analog is really what creates this kind of organic blend, and it really makes the synth stand out compared to other digital synths like a DX7 or something. It doesn't really need FM or other type of synthesis, because on its own, the amount of timbres you can have from the different waveforms and the analog touch that you add on it is really like creating some organic vibes that are totally different from other synthesizers, you know. And so an important thing is when you overdrive the DCA4, you add distortion to the sound, and it's really increasing the artifacts of the oscillators, and you know, it creates some life into the sound, like literally. So the filter is analog and it's resonant. So here it's modulated with the velocity, and it creates pretty interesting shapes. So yeah, so this part is really important in the sound. And now I will jump back to the main panel and talk a bit more about the voice dispersion. So maybe to show you really the effect of it, I will change my presets and I will use this one. So voice dispersion introduces some slight differences between the cutoff frequency, the resonance levels, and the amplification stage of the synth. So here, if I remove any dispersion, it will sound kind of regular, like this. But if I introduce a lot of dispersion, you will hear a kind of pattern that repeats, and each voice will have different parameters, slight differences, and it will create some more organic feels because each note will be slightly different. So here you can hear a kind of rhythmic pattern that will be created. And I don't know if you can hear, I will increase the resonance so you can hear more the effect on the filter. And if I remove dispersion, it's flat, it's always the same. So this is a nice touch that we add to all the collection instruments and analog synthesizers in general. Yeah. So this is really a nice touch on top of the sound of the oscillators that is really like increasing the organic feel of the synthesizers. So yeah, so like I said, you have the three oscillators, you have the filter, you have the DCA4, like this analog stage that really enhances the sound. And then what's impressive with this synthesizer is that you have a wide array of modulations. You have 4 envelopes, 3 LFOs, and we also added the modulation mixer. So I will play this preset afterwards, and it's interesting because it uses all the different envelopes, And as you may notice, we have a mode in each envelope, and you can select among the classic SQ80 envelopes. You can select multi-segment envelopes and also DADSR envelopes, which are more classic and more snappy than the classic envelopes. So this preset has been made by Blush Response. And it's really complex. So you have the 4 envelopes. The first one is like a standard DADSR, and it's modulating the first oscillator here. So it's just like scanning in the wavetable, and it brings a bit of movement in the beginning of the sound. Then we have the oscillator 2, which creates this kind of blur movement. And then we have the third oscillator that creates this kind of breath behind. And this is really interesting to note that each envelope is used in a different way. So I've added this small thing to this preset, and I've used the envelope 3 to modulate the resonance. So I will activate this modulation now. And as you can see, it loops and creates this kind of pattern on the resonance. So this is really what's nice with this all these modulations, is that you can really make pads or evolving SFX, and by pressing just one key, you can have a lot of movement. And also the oscillator 3 has a LFO on its volume, so it's just coming up front and backward, and it's really changing the mood a little bit and creates this kind of a live feeling. So yeah, and then maybe I want to talk a little bit about the modulation mixer, because sometimes it may appear complex, but it's actually super useful. It's kind of a utility. And so on this preset, it's a kick. So on this preset, I will show you a little bit what you can do with it, or what I like to do actually, because I won't show you everything because it has different modes. So you have different mathematical operations that it can do. And the multiply, I think, is really useful. So here, what I'm gonna do is I will replace the modulations that are applied to the pitch of the oscillator. And this is what creates this kick, actually, like you can hear now. And I will replace these connections by the modulation mixer. So the envelope 1 was assigned to the oscillator, and now I will just route the envelope 1, and I will modulate the envelope 1 by itself, so multiply it by itself, so that I can increase the sharpness of the modulation signal. And now I will modulate the oscillator pitch with the modulation mixer, and you will be able to hear the difference. So this is like the normal signal, and if I increase the amount, it will increase the sharpness of the signal. And I will also reset the envelopes on each tree. So you can see, without that, the kick is more like, I don't know, a bit too big. You might need a compressor to shape it a bit more. And with it, I can increase the sharpness of the modulations. And on this original synth, the envelopes are quite slow and not really snappy, so it's really useful to have this. And that's also why we added some DADSR. And like this, for example, I can just exponentialize the modulation and make it more sharp. And this is the main usage I have in general in the way I design sounds. But you can also do other really convenient stuff. For example, you can sidechain modulation with another one. For example, if I assign an LFO to the modulation mixer, it will like sidechain the envelope signal. So we can really make more interactive patches. And for example, if I assign it to the mod wheel and increase the mod wheel, it will apply pitch modulation, and without the mod wheel, it won't apply modulation. So it's a way to sidechain or modulate modulation amounts, let's say, which is really convenient. And yeah, so with these envelopes, the LFOs, and the mixer, it really leaves a lot of room to design precise patches, evolving patches, and complex patches if you want to. But you can also do simple sounds, of course. And I will jump back to the previous preset and just mention that on top of all of that, you also have a wide array of effects. So here, for example, if I raise the module, it increases the stereo pan and brings movement. And there is also a chorus that's been used here, pitch shift delay, and also a flanger like you can hear here. And we have designed a new way to route effects with nice schematics to help you understand how it works. And it's really more graphic. And this is really the cherry on the cake to help you design sounds more easily. And yeah, that's it, basically. So I won't dive too much into the details of the synthesizer because you probably already saw some presentations, some YouTube videos about it. But you now have a global overview of what composes the synth. So right now, maybe we can invite Lily to talk about the presets she designed in the factory library. So Lily is one of our sound designers, and she's been designing a lot of presets in the additional sound banks and also in the factory library. So she will join us and explain a little bit how she designs sounds and what are the little subtleties in the different presets she picked for us. So, yep. Lily, can you come?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Edouard. Hi, everyone.
So, Lily, so you selected a few sounds that you really enjoyed designing. And so I'm pretty happy to have you with us because sometimes you play a lot of sounds from sound designers, and it's sometimes great to have a face behind and also to understand a bit how they work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm pretty happy if you can introduce the sounds you've selected and explain, maybe bring a bit of light on how you design these sounds and maybe what are the differences or the specificities of these sounds and what makes them so special.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to be here. So I actually made most of the sounds, most of my sounds for SQ80 for Dust Materials, which is the lo-fi bank, which I highly recommend, as well as the factory library. But I just picked 3 contrasting presets I made. And so the first one is called Liquid Thoughts. It's a very deep, evolving, it's kind of subtle, deep pad. So I can just start playing a bit and then I'll explain
of course.
what like the main features of it.
All right. Wow. Yeah, I think it represents well what you can do with all these modulations and how just with a few notes and sustaining them, you can really have movement in the sound. It really feels alive.
It feels alive, but it's very subtle at the same time. It's not like in your face, these modulations. But that's why I love this sound. And so the first thing is that even though you hear evolving things, the 3 oscillators that are activated, which use the classic waveforms of the SQ80, they're all mapped to the first envelope, all 3 of them, at 100%. So that when you play, it's like very very clean. It's a very clean effect. So, like
Okay, it controls the volume of the three oscillators.
Yeah, that controls the volume of all three at the same way. So the modulations that happen are really inside the sound, but it's a very nice to play because they're all together. There's a coherence.
Okay.
And the main fluctuation that we hear actually is coming from the LFO1, which is mapped onto the filter cutoff here. No, sorry, it's envelope 2. The LFO is for something else. They're both, that's the thing in this preset, is that they're both triangle shaped. And in the envelope 2, it's looped, as you can see here, and it's synced.
Okay, so it's a multi-segment envelopes, and you use it kind of like a LFO?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you can do with the envelopes when you use the, this one is the MSEG, and you can use these as LFOs as well.
Okay.
If you loop them, but here you have even more freedom to draw what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what creates this organic swelling motion that you can hear in the sound, is that it's just mapped to the filter cutoff and it's swirling and coming back like waves.
But I think that, so I heard this modulation, but at some point, maybe it's when you touch the mod wheel, I've heard maybe more, not grittiness, but more texture in the sound in a way, and maybe another movement or just like something more, you know, this kind of oscillator grits. So how did you achieve that?
So for me, like the biggest surprise, like the good surprise about the SQ80 is there's so many destinations.
Yeah.
You know, for almost each parameter, you have 2 possibilities of modulation parameters. And so in the filter cutoff, I don't only have the envelope 2, but I have the mod wheel, which so it's a constant. It just shifts everything. It shifts the window up. Whereas the envelope, it's swelling, it's coming back in circles. But when I bring the mod wheel up, that sort of metallic sound is coming from the breath waveform here.
It's the same waveform we've heard before in one of the presets I've played.
Yeah, that has this really nice, smooth, metallic sound.
A kind of signature sound, I would say, in this synth, right? This kind of weird, noisy, breathy waveforms are really particular.
And if you wanted to make it even more lo-fi, and you could, map this to like the fine tuning, the semitones, the pitch, to make it waver, and also make some, spaces like you showed earlier in between the fine tuning of the oscillators, and it creates thickness.
Yeah. Also. And did you use some effects also on this preset?
And in the effects window, you can see. So actually, I thought there were more effects, but there's the LFO1 that's on the reverb, and this is also a really cool feature in the LFOs.
When I was saying, sometimes it feels like there is like space around the sound, but not all the time. Is this why? Is this the reason why? Yeah,
because you have the possibility to push to select reset on the LFO, which means that with every voice, with every new note you play, it resets it to the beginning of basically where it's set at. So that's the starting point.
Okay. So when you press the key, you decrease the reverb, and it increases over time. So you have more precision when you play keys, and then you have more width.
You can hear the difference when I take it off. It's gonna sound much more like muddy in a sense. You're not gonna have that first note that's like strong. See?
Oh, yeah.
The attack is gone.
Yeah.
I put the reset, and the attack is starting at when it's drier here, and then it swells. So it creates a really nice
and this filter that you added just aside the reverb is a second kind of movement that you introduced.
And this is the thing that makes it sound organic, is that you already have the looped envelope 2 on the main filter.
Yeah.
But you can also add as many filters as you want in the effects window. And here I have a second low pass filter, and you can see it's self-oscillating. The cutoff is oscillating with LFO3.
Okay, and so you have sort of 2 syncopated movements occurring at the same time.
This one's not synced, or it is dotted. It's dotted synced, and it's not at all synced to this one.
Okay.
So when you play, there are 2 filters that their cutoffs are moving, but at different speeds, at different intervals. So that's what makes that very organic, unpredictable feeling.
Yeah, so it's like even more movement that you can introduce with the original synth, basically. Okay. Well,
maybe you can go to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So, what's new about this one?
So I called it Cyclones because of you'll hear the mod wheel effect to really sense it into space, and so it made me think of a storm, like the effect of the wind, and it's kind of a mix between an atmospheric pad and a sound effect. It's almost like a sound.
I guess there is also some movement in this one.
Yeah, I'll play it a little bit so you can hear.
Okay.
And then it comes back.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this one is really airy as well, like super, like I don't know. It feels like you're flying in the storm, actually.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's smooth, sometimes there is more movement. So can you explain us a little bit what are the key points that you want to underline in this preset?
Yeah, I think the first thing you hear when you play this, like the signature thing, is like that rattling sort of
this kind of pattern
sound effect, and it's you can see it's the envelope 2. This is one of the presets I think that we have in the MSEG. You see, there's these really cool shapes.
Yeah.
Here, some are rhythmic, some are more random. And this one, I've used quite a lot. It can do even a strumming effect on some sounds.
So this is creating this kind of rhythm.
Yeah, and this one is on it's on oscillator 2.
Okay.
You can see the movement here.
Yeah.
On the pulse, this trance wave, which is already kind of gritty, it's already kind of a different sort of sound than in the classic ones. And it's not synced either. I did it on purpose to make the looping window unsynced and kind of, off the grid. So that when you're playing it in a composition, it's not repeating on the same measure. It's not like always looping on the same measure. So
it's like a free element that will fly over the rest of the composition.
Yeah, you can create that illusion, even though it's looping, you can create that illusion of it's never the same by doing that. Yeah. And we have also, in this one, the mod mixer is the LFO3, which has this noise waveform that I picked, which is moving really quickly, is on the mod wheel. So, like you said, it's like the LFO3's waveform is going to impact the modulation amounts that are on the mod wheel, which are those spatial elements that we can hear when I lifted it up, the reverb and the reverb decay here.
Okay, yeah.
It adds this kind of grittiness.
Okay. And isn't it like also affecting the oscillator or something? I think I've seen something here.
And that's the fun thing, is that you can have something modulating something, and then you take that and then you add it to
And if we isolate the oscillator one, can we listen to what it does?
Yeah, sure. So basically the output of the mod mixer is modulating the amplitude, the volume of oscillator 1. And I can make it, it's right here, mod mixer, I can make it a bit more pronounced so you can hear. And you can actually, you can see this is what's
and the rate is changing so that...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's changing because the LFO3 is being modulated by the LFO1.
Okay.
Which is a sine. So it's like getting slower and faster.
It takes a bit of reverse engineering here.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like a chain, of things.
Okay, yeah, so the movement, so it brings movement, and there is also movement in the way it brings movement. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so... Yeah, that's a really cool pad. And so and when you push the mod wheel as well, you increase like the space of the patch, like with effects. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I showed right here.
Okay. You're increasing the time of the reverb and the amount of reverb.
Decay. And the reverb decay. So it's like it's almost like an exponential sort of spatial augmentation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And and what's also adding that spatial effect is the
tape delay?
the sine wave, that slow sine wave is also changing the tape delay.
Okay.
So it's adding also an evolution on
a different flavor of spatialization over time. Okay. Well, that's super cool. This preset is really awesome.
And the last one.
This one is my favorite. Yeah, I know this one. It's one of the presets that I kind of had really some fun when I reviewed the factory library before the release. I was playing some presets, and this one I was like, this is really the funniest, you know, it's like, but maybe I can let you introduce it before.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I guess you can call it a sequence.
But without a sequencer, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And this, you know, you can also find this in the DX7. We have a lot of people, a lot of sound designers who had fun drawing their MSEG envelopes and stacking them onto each other with the operators. So,
can we listen to it?
Yeah. So this is when there's one note. And if you play them together, then it will be. Then it's like a sequence in chords.
Yeah, it's like a family of robots that are trying to sing together, but not really at the same time.
It's a robot ensemble. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you achieve like all these kind of movements? Like when you played one note, I feel like I've heard some different elements, even though, yeah, I don't know. Can you explain it a little bit? How did you do?
Yeah. So I mean, all the envelopes work well. The SQ80, but I really enjoy playing with the MSEG envelopes, and so I thought, well, you can create the illusion, or not the illusion. You can create different stackings of oscillators with different envelopes, and it creates a sensation of a trig delay, which means like one of them starts a little bit after the other, even though you play just one note. And so I'll just show you what I mean. So each oscillator is modulated by a different envelope. So oscillator 1 to envelope 1. So I'll show you from the, like working from the ground up.
Like split.
Yeah, this is the first one. So this is the most simple, the simple loop. This one is synced to the first, to a measure, or to one beat.
Okay.
This loop. And then the second one is on envelope 2. And well, they're actually all synced. It's just, see it. I made this one start one beat after the other one.
It's really subtle. You can hear it just in the back.
Yeah, and it's like a nice syncopated effect. And also you can hear the pitch is not the same as the other one. Yeah. So you can have so much fun, like stacking chords or stacking strumming, you know, that play in different harmonies. So this one is see.
Yeah, 5 semitones lower than the other one.
Yeah, so it sounds an octave higher than this one, but it's a fifth above. And then the third one. This one is the most subtle one. You don't hear it as loud as the other two.
Oh yeah.
It's a bell transwave.
And so I can see a lot of pink here. Yeah. So when you raise the module, it changes the timbre of this one?
Yeah, it's going to change the shape of this one. So you can hear it just change. It changes the timbre.
And also, before when you played, you raised the module, and I heard a little bit like maybe of portamento or something. That kind of made me think that it's kind of voices that were singing together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, do you mean like the glide?
Yeah, the glide.
Yeah. I did this with a lot of presets because it changes a lot. It can almost change the genre, the style of the preset. You know, like in some styles of music, you'll hear the glide more often. So I felt like this was more classic, and this is more like IDM. You know. Yeah,
definitely.
So I thought it added something to increase the glide with the mod wheel. And the fact that it's polyphonic, you know, and so that's how and when you play you play different notes at different, like, you know, one after the other really quickly, it creates a fluttering effect. And the looping together. And yeah, and when I increase the
and a bit of effects as well.
Yeah, I was saying like that. If you want that lo-fi effect, the grittiness, you can increase the spatial effects like the delay and reverb, but also adds a bit of overdrive, or if there's a bit crusher or something like that, then it adds to that.
A bit of texture.
Yeah, and lo-fi quality. And there's also some aftertouch, some chorus on the aftertouch. So if you hear.
Oh yeah, I can hear that
it is quite subtle if I make it.
It increases the width. Oh yeah, yeah, the sound goes backward in a way. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it kind of, in those presets, you kind of have a way to increase the expressivity in the way you play. You use the mod wheel, you use the aftertouch, and it brings life to the preset in some way.
Yeah, and there's like no limit to what you can do with like you see even in the effects parameters, not just dry wet, you have many destinations.
Yeah.
For modulation, so it's extremely rich.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people in the collection that really praise the sound of the core of the instrument, but in modern sound design as well, it's really important, I think, to work with effects and maybe link them directly in the instrument. This way you can really modulate them in the way you play, and it's kind of different to have them out of on the track, for example. Yeah,
totally.
Well, thank you, Lydia. These presets are really, really cool. I think like it's kind of lo-fi and it's kind of super aerial, and I don't know, I really love them. Especially this one, I think it's really funny. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're done here. So yeah, maybe we can just keep to the questions and answers if we received some questions. So I will open your questions here. Okay. So first question is SQ80 V part of V Collection 8? Well, no, it's not part of V Collection 8. But during the launch offer that is occurring right now, you can buy V Collection 8 for discounted price plus the SQ80 V with it. So it's kind of bundled together, but these are not really part. This is not part of the bundle. It's just during the launch offer. And of course, for the people who already have V Collection 8, you have a special deal, and it's really cheaper than the standard price. And if you purchase SQ80 V right now, you also get 2 sound banks. One is called Raw Machinery, and the other one is called Dust Materials. And Dust Materials includes a lot of presets that you design, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dust Materials is a lo-fi bank, and Raw Machinery is more industrial bank. And a lot of artists in the industrial scene are using SQ80 because of its like grit and like particular tone. So I recommend to check it out if you like lo-fi sounds or industrial sounds. It's really super great sound banks. So the next question, so in the front panel, the diagram says that there is amplitude modulation and it's missing. So no, it's not missing. So if you can't find the amplitude modulation, it's because you're looking at the hardware panel, like you said, Lily.
It's in the advanced panel, the synthesis.
Yeah,
panel.
In the synthesis view on the oscillator too, you have this amplitude modulation control, and you can access it to your convenience. It's not like restricted or something. So the next question is, can you import presets from the old USQ1 tapes? So directly from a tape, no. But we support preset imports from SQ80 presets using SizeX. So if you can find on internet SizeX presets, you can just import them like normal presets using the import function in the browser. Yeah. So next question. So is the voice dispersion a shared set of parameters among V Collection synths, or is it specific to each synthesizer? So this is a very good question. So voice dispersion is mostly applied to analog synths, and it's a very important parameter if you want to get the organic part of the sound of the analog sound. It means that between each voice you will have discrepancies, and for example the cutoff frequency won't be exactly the same, the pulse width will be slightly different, the pitch of each voice will be slightly different, and all these inconsistencies make the sound more organic. So we don't have this in all the collection synths, we only have this on the most recent synths. And in some synthesizers, like for example fully digital synths, you don't really have voice dispersion because everything is processed digitally. So the SQ80 is kind of a different candidate because it's one part of digital and the second part is analog. So you have kind of inconsistencies between the voices, and it's really something that makes it special. So next question. Did you consider adding the built-in effects from the Ensoniq VFX or the DP4? Yes, but working on reverse engineering digital synths is very, very tedious and very long. For example, reverse engineering the whole OS of the SQ80 to get exactly the same sound took approximately 2 years. And reverse engineering the DP4 or the VFX FX is kind of a bigger task. Let's say it's kind of doubling the project. So in the time frame, we couldn't make this happen, but DP4 is definitely something to consider for maybe a FX collection one day or something, because it's really a great piece of gear. Then so I don't really understand this question, so maybe I'll skip.
The guy wants you to describe the Black Mirror preset, which is enjoyed the most.
That's in the factory library?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Okay, so someone says that he owns he's enjoying the sounds and is really keen on analyzing the Black Mirror preset, so I'm not really sure which one it is.
We can open it.
Okay, let's try it. So Black Mirror. It's a preset from Simon. Simon Galifet is one of the sound designers who's working with us. Okay, so it's really, really complex. So what do we have here? So maybe like you used to do, there is a part of the modulations that are modulating the volume of the oscillators. So I guess these are the LFOs.
And the LFOs also are being modulated, so... Yeah. You can see it in real time.
Oh yeah. So on one side we have the LFOs modulating the volume of the oscillators, and then the LFOs rates are being modulated by the envelopes and the keyboard, which creates this kind of changes in speed over time, right?
Yeah, like a rising effect. And also it's reset from the beginning, too.
Yeah. And also the amplitude of the LFOs is modulated as well, so that when it accelerates, maybe it's tamed a little bit and not as drastic as when it's slower. And
there's one on each oscillator. For 1, 2, 3.
So yeah, I think it really uses what's interesting in the synth in a modern approach, let's say. It's really like fading the different oscillators and bringing movement in the sound. So it's true that to make ambient or SFX sound is really good. And I guess Lily, as you're producing ambient music, right? So this can be a tool that you can, a kind of go-to tool to do ambient, right?
Especially atmospheric sounds, because since you can modulate each oscillator with different speeds and different shapes, then you can quickly get really rich, really interesting soundscapes, like this one. That one, like it's almost like a granular effect, and then that's a slower movement, but still like changing speed. Yeah,
nice.
which
creates
a
really cool.
complex result. Yeah.
All right. Maybe we can jump back to the questions. Are presets going to be available in Analog Lab?
Oh, yeah.
So, if you don't own SQ80, we selected a few presets that are available in Analog Lab. Then, if you don't own SQ80, you can still purchase the sound banks, the raw material and dust. No,
Raw machinery.
raw machinery and dust materials, and you can import them in Analog Lab. There is no problem. So yeah.
Mm.
Oh, that's a question for you. That's a hard question, right?
It's yeah.
So the question is, Lily, how do you go about designing a preset?
Well, first of all, it depends on. If you're really going from scratch and you're not, you don't have something really planned in mind, which for me is like the greatest way to create anything. You know, it's like you have a blank canvas and you just let your mind wander. Then I was actually talking to Jean-Michel, our other sound designer, about this today. Is that we end up with a result that's not always necessarily intentional. It wasn't planned, but it's like following a train of thought, kind of. It's like one thing leads to the other, and you're discovering how your sound evolves in real time and experimenting with different parameters, and especially different combinations of parameters. If you always start the same way, you're going to often end up with presets that seem quite similar.
Yeah.
I've had that a lot. Sometimes I've had like, you know, they're like almost aliases of each other. If you try to start a very different way each time, then you have new surprises.
Yeah. Well, I was discussing pretty much the same topic with Victor, another sound designer that works with us. And when composing and sound designing, we've come to a conclusion that it's really cool to split the two jobs. You know, when you're composing, I think it's really great to capture the inspiration and not really spend time designing sounds, and really just trying to put together what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And here it's really better to have a streamlined workflow and to be efficient, because, you know, sometimes ideas can come and leave. And on the other hand, when you're sound designing, it's really great, like you said, to start with a blank canvas, and you can just build ideas, build bricks of tools that you will use later to compose and to, you know, to pick, let's say, in your works.
And so, just seeing how things interact with each other, and also sometimes, you know, like finding the unlikely ways that features can interact with each other. That's not doesn't seem like the obvious way.
Yeah, definitely.
Can yield good results too.
Yeah. So the next question, what are your biggest challenges and the biggest things you guys learned through making this synth? Well, actually that's a relevant question, because, you know, sometimes you can feel that modeling, for example, a CEST80 or Jupiter 8 or analog synth is really complicated, and digital synth is maybe easier in a way because it's digital and it's going to a computer, blah, blah, blah. But actually, this is absolutely not true. Mm-hmm. And for example, here for the SQ80, the biggest, a big challenge is modeling the analog part, but this is kind of the core activity that we are doing in V Collection since years. So modeling a filter or amplification stage and the nonlinearities of all of that is kind of easy, not easy, but is the core of the competencies we have in DSP here. But when it comes to reverse engineering a whole OS of a synth to get exactly the same behavior as the original synth, it's really harder. So I think this was the biggest challenge here. And like I said, it took like 2 years to reverse engineer this synth. So every single bit of code and trying just to reverse engineer it and get exactly the same thing as the original. And this is maybe a great question as a conclusion for the live stream. So yeah, well, thank you guys. I hope that you learned a lot of stuff today and that you're probably now interested in trying the SQ80 V. So as I always say, you should really try the demo and try the synth by yourself. It's really by exploring the tools and what it can do that you can get surprised, because the way I use the synth or the way Lily uses the synth is kind of personal, and you may have different tastes in terms of music genres. And this synth has a really special character, but it's also very polyvalent. So whatever the style of music you're producing, I'd really recommend to try it by yourself and maybe find that it fits for you, because it's bringing something that other synths are not bringing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and the intro offer is still on for a few days, like for 1 week. So you can benefit from a great offer depending of which product you own. And also, if you purchase it during the intro offer, you get 2 free sound banks. The raw machinery and dust materials on which Lily has made a lot of presets. So I definitely recommend to check it out, and I hope we'll see you next time. Take care.
See you next time.
Cheers.